Okay, on today's show, English could soon be banned, Labour have been wounded after something unexpected, and the council seems to think that only cycles exist. Let's begin. The article says that just 1 in 5 voters think that Sir Keir Starmer has been a good Labour leader, and most haven't actually got a clue what he stands for. A wounding YouGov poll reveals that just 2% believe the opposition's chief's 3 years in charge have actually been great, and 20% say good. And that is of course less than the 28% who reckon he has been either a poor or terrible party leader, while steadily improving 48% of Brits say Sir Keir has done a bad job setting out his vision for the country, with just 31% saying he has done well. The Labour leader recently laid out his 5 missions for the government, should he of course win the next election. They hone in on growth, green energy and of course the NHS, crime and education. But he has been dogged by the relentless accusations of flip-flopping, from support and freedom of movement to wanting Shamima Begum to return to the UK. The Tories of course have drawn up a dossier of 32 supposed U-turns during his 3-year tenure. Conservative chairman Greg Hands said Sir Slippery will say anything if the politics suit him. We have had 3 years of inconsistency and optimism from Labour, flip-flopping back and onto the most important issues we face. Well, to be honest, it just makes me wonder how soon it'll be before he flip-flops on his latest comment, which apparently from what I've heard is that he reckons that 99% of women don't have a penis, which presumably means that he thinks that some women actually do have a penis, and to be honest I hope it's not bigger than mine. But then again, I am quite good in a 3-legged race. But anyway, the only other choice that we've really got out there because of the 2-party system is Rishi, who, to be honest, I'm not impressed with so far at all, especially with his Windsor framework deal, which apparently he reckons seems to fix Brexit, but to be honest I reckon actually shackles us to the EU via Northern Ireland, and will if anything therefore make it really hard for us to diverge from the EU itself, because of course we don't want to put our union with Northern Ireland at any potential risk, do we? But for him to say that it still fixes problems, even after Bill Cash and all the other people from the ERG actually went through the fine-tooth comb and pointed things out to Rishi, or people in general rather, it just shows to me that he's about as truthful as Pinocchio. Whilst I'm sure more votes though will now go to Reform UK and other parties like that, I don't think they'll stand actually a chance of getting in number 10, so let's just say 2024's election should be quite interesting, especially of course because a lot of people out there actually want Boris back and feel that Rishi actually betrayed him by of course creating his website Ready for Rishi or whatever it was called, apparently back in December 2021. But that aside, Labour are generally seen as quite a woke party in general, aren't they, with the whole taking the knee and things like that back with the BLM movement. And of course don't forget several of the MPs actually stood on the picket line with all the strikes that were going on all over the country. So if anything, I'm sure they'll be on the side of the unions rather than the side of the everyday person who just wants to actually get things done and go to places and whatever these strikes are stopping us from doing. And of course, where there is woke leadership, there will no doubtly be woke policies. Which in fact reminds me of this whole Sam Smith interview on the One Show, I think it was, where I only caught a bit of it, but from what I remember, he called fishermen fisher them, meaning that presumably he expects us to know what he's on about every time he does that, so therefore probably hoping to change the job titles by raising the word man and replacing it not with person, of course, like what you'd think, but by them. I mean, can you imagine if they'd done it with words instead, like manhole, for example? Oh, be careful, when crossing the road you don't step into them hole. Or words like manners would somehow turn into themers or something like that. But don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against anyone who says they think they're this or they think they're that. At the end of the day, I don't really care. It's up to them what they think they are. But at the same time, I don't think they should change stuff from the majority just to please all 2% of the minority. Or whatever the percentage number is. But I do think they should only legally be classed as that particular sex if they've had a certain operation, let's just say. But obviously everyone will have their own views, won't they? Locals have been left fuming over a council's confusing new road lanes, which cost £1 million, saying it's like a mini labyrinth. The new cycle-optimised protected signals, Cyclops apparently it's called, junction built using part of public fund, was branded a waste of money by taxpayers in Bury, Greater Manchester. The layout, which has 3 give-way points, 6 entrances and a mini set of traffic lights, is meant to separate pedestrians and cyclists from motor traffic. And the Labour-run authority, well there's a surprise, hopes it's one of the several projects that improves all forms of journeys across the Greater Manchester region. But locals vented their fury at the route, which straddles the A56 and A58 and also has 2 zebra crossings. Lewis Miles, who's 58, who was walking along the road this morning, said it's a complete mess from start to finish. A social media post slamming the layout has generated hundreds of comments from bemused locals. One wrote, "Absolute joke. The money spent by this Labour council is astounding. Next they will be buying bikes for everyone. I drive along this route about 4 times a day and seen more gazelles than bike riders." A spokesman from Bury Council said the new junction was part of a regional development plan to help connect communities across Greater Manchester. They said, "This works to construct the new Cyclops junction at Anglomania, I hope I pronounced that right, way in Bury from part of the B network that is being funded by Transport for Greater Manchester. This is a region-wide initiative to improve all forms of journey connecting communities together, making it easier, safer and more attractive for people who travel on foot or bike for everyday trips." Well, no doubt, of course, this is all because of the government's green agenda, but if you think about it, if they're creating routes especially for cyclists to separate them from motor vehicles and things like that, then presumably they're going to make it harder for motor vehicles to go around, and therefore they may have to take an alternative route, meaning that, if anything, they're using more fuel, which will surely go against what they're planning to do, won't it? Because what's the point wasting all this money on cycle lanes and things like that if it affects the efficiency of a driver's journey? I mean, think about it. Whatever happened to cycle lanes being on the same path as pedestrians, but with a line down the middle dividing the two? Thereby everyone's going the same way on the same road or path or whatever, rather than being diverted all over the place. I mean, how can anyone make sense of this, especially cyclists who, let's face it, often seem to have trouble knowing what to do at traffic lights, don't they? And of course, don't even get me started on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, because let's face it, they say, oh, it's for the environment by going slow, but surely if it's using more engine power by being in a lower gear, then that is going to put out more harmful chemicals, isn't it? Just doesn't make any sense. Unless, of course, they're thinking of the safety aspect rather than the two emissions, but let's face it, they've tried to put them together as often as possible, don't they? An Italian political party is attempting to bring in hefty fines for the use of English words as a way of promoting their mother language. New legislation from Prime Minister Giorgia Melton, right-wing party, has pushed for the punishment of English and other foreign words used in official communications. Such a usage could land an offending person with a fine ranging from anywhere between £4,300 or €5,000 to a hefty £87,000 or €100,000. In an attempt to combat Anglomania, the Italian politician Fabio Pontelli, I pronounced that right, has asked for the battle for the use of language to continue into legal and official documents. The new legislation, if passed, would see politicians and bureaucrats fined for using English or other languages in speech or spelling. Said legislation rallies against English as, wait for it apparently demeans and mortifies the Italian language, with a parliamentary debate yet to be scheduled over the potential introduction of such laws. Mr Ramalelli, in defending the bill, said, "In the lower chamber of deputies, we speak Italian. We continue our battle for the use of our language instead of English. We can't understand why we call dispenser the automatic hand sanitizer dispenser instead of hand sanitizer dispenser, for instance." Same thing, isn't it? Fabio believes the Italians should be using their own language and opting for, here's my Italian, ready for it, dispenser di liquidadio is di la man instead. I'll put it on the screen for you. According to recent studies reported by Euronews, the Italian language directory Trenicate, hope I pronounced that right, features 800,000 Italian words, yet also a staggering 9,000 English words. As well as that, anyone holding office in public administration must demonstrate a written and oral knowledge and mastery of the Italian language. Whilst I of course can understand that a country wants to use its official language, to be honest, I think social media does play quite a big part here, doesn't it? I mean, quite often American terms and phrases often come over here, and yes, I know they are basically English themselves, but things obviously spread easier over social media, and therefore people in general do tend to opt for those terms. And by fining people for doing that, I think if anything it makes them sound a little bit like China rather than Italy, doesn't it? I mean, can you imagine if we'd done that? If the situation was of course reversed, we'd be called all sorts of things, wouldn't we? Although of course quite a lot of people in Wales actually do speak English rather than Welsh, don't they? So in that case a lot of their traffic signs and other things feature both the English words and Welsh words, don't they? So leaving it up to the people which ones they want to use. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the same applies to signs and things like that in other countries as well, rather than just Wales. But of course it is quite frightening how quickly things on social media do sort of spread, isn't it? I mean, not so long ago I remember the company, or one of the companies I was working with, used the term hashtag for pressing hash on the telephone, rather than just saying hash, which of course I took great delight in taking the mickey out of them for. So I'm guessing we'll probably just have to wait and see if their policy gets put in place, but I've got a feeling it probably won't do. No doubt, of course, they've probably got a green agenda on their own, which, let's face it, governments in general just seem to be all in on at the moment, don't they? Which I'm guessing is the reason why in this video the government is doing something which will no doubt pee off smokers everywhere. Anyway, subscribe for more and I'll see you in the next one.